Hello, this is KYC News. We provide you with the most up-to-date and reliable information for the day. First and foremost, we want to achieve perfect health with a sincere desire. On June 28, Putin will travel to Tajikistan. Outrage is caused by the UK's rocket and feather fuel pricing to preserve businesses. On June 28, Putin will travel to Tajikistan. Kremlin. According to Dmitry Peskov, a spokesman for the Kremlin, Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to Tajikistan on a working trip on Tuesday to meet with Emomali Rakhmon, the country's president. Tomorrow is the day of President Putin's working trip to Tajikistan. There, he will speak with Tajik President Emomali Rakhmon and meet with him in response to a task query, Peskov stated. The Kremlin official specifically stated that the leaders will have a one-on-one discussion when discussing the structure of the talks. On his journey to Turkmenistan, another post-Soviet nation, the Russian president will stop at Dushanbe. Putin will attend the Caspian summit there. On June 29, the event will begin in Ashgabat. Putin will be making his second journey abroad this year and his first to a face-to-face global meeting. He traveled to China in February, the country hosting the Olympic and Paralympic Games. The last time the Russian president visited Turkmenistan in 2019 was to attend a CIS Heads of State Council meeting. He also traveled to Tajikistan in the same year. In September of last year, when the capital of the republic held sessions of the Collective Security Treaty Organization and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Putin was also scheduled to travel to Dushanbe. He was compelled to stay in Russia to isolate himself just before the trip, nevertheless, as a result of contacts with members of his group who were coronavirus infected. Official confirmation that Qatar would host the unofficial Iran-US nuclear deal discussions. Iran has stated that the location of the indirect negotiations with major international powers regarding its nuclear program will change from Vienna to Qatar. Iranian media advisor Mohammad Marandi told the new Arab sister site Al Arabi Al Jadid that Qatar was chosen as the location for talks since it is a friendly nation. The announcement follows reports that Iran might select a Gulf nation, possibly Qatar or Oman, to reopen indirect negotiations with the U.S. Qatar has historically had cordial relations with its neighbor Iran and is a reliable U.S. partner. Marandi emphasized to Al Arabi Al Jadid that the restart of negotiations did not indicate that a deal was imminent. Any agreement was contingent on lifting sanctions and providing guarantees to Iran, Marandi said, adding that the Americans have not yet taken a necessary decision on these matters. The Iranian official claimed that since the Americans had irreversibly breached the nuclear accord and chosen a policy of maximum pressure, Tehran needs to make sure that Washington could not just resume its past behavior. After 11 months of indirect negotiations between Tehran and President Joe Biden's administration, the agreement appeared to be nearing completion in March when the EU, which is coordinating negotiations, called foreign ministers from the sides to Vienna to finalize the deal. The talks, however, have since been put on hold due in large part to Tehran's insistence that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, its elite security force, be taken off the U.S. list of foreign terrorist organizations. Josep Borrell, the head of the EU's foreign policy, visited Iran last week and stated on Saturday that indirect negotiations to end the impasse were anticipated to continue in the near future in a Gulf nation. Iran's chief nuclear negotiator Ali Bagheri Khani will be in Doha for the talks on June 28 and 29, an Iranian official told Reuters, contradicting a source briefed on the trip's expectations that U.S. Special Envoy for Iran, Robert Malley, is expected to arrive in Doha on Monday and will meet with the Qatari foreign minister. One Iranian official and one from Europe told Reuters last week that although Iran has dropped its demand for the lifting of the FTO restrictions on the IRGC, there were still two concerns, including one related to sanctions, that needed to be resolved. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh stated on Monday that nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. In the upcoming weeks, we'll see if we can get to a consensus. If Washington keeps its promises, Iran's nuclear progress is reversible. Iran's nuclear activities were constrained by the 2015 nuclear agreement in exchange for the removal of international sanctions. When the U.S. withdrew from the agreement in 2018, then President Donald Trump reinstituted crushing economic sanctions against Tehran. In response, Iran's clerical leadership violated the agreement's nuclear limits, which included a cap on the purity of uranium that it could purify at 3.67% and a weight limit of 202.8 kilograms on its stock of enriched uranium. Outrage is caused by the UK's rocket and feather fuel pricing to preserve businesses. A typical example of rocket and feather pricing has been levelled at fuel merchants in the UK as the price of gasoline set a record high and the cost of living issue worsens. According to the Royal Automobile Club, RAC, corporations now have a clear chance to halt steadily boosting pump prices as a result of significant drops in gasoline wholesale costs. Prices are high at a time when inflation is at a 40-year high of 9.1%, driven by rising food and energy costs. The average cost of a litre of gasoline at UK forecourts rose to a high of £1.91 on Sunday, according to data provider Experian. On Saturday, diesel prices hit a record high of £1.99 per litre before marginally declining the next day to £1.98 per litre. Diesel was priced at £1.33 per litre and gasoline at £1.31 12 months ago. Following a request from Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng, the Competition and Markets Authority began a short and focused investigation of fuel pricing earlier this month. Retailers immediately increase pump prices when the price of oil rises, but they take their time passing along the benefits of oil price declines, according to the theory of rocket and feather pricing for fuel. Simon Williams, a spokesman for AC Fuel, said, "We are finding it difficult to understand how retailers can continue to raise the price of unleaded given the sharp decline in the cost of gasoline at the wholesale level. Unfortunately, this is a great example of rocket and feather pricing in action, and the Competition and Markets Authority will undoubtedly be closely examining it." Retailers don't seem to be decreasing their forecourt pricing despite having a clear opportunity to do so, which appears to be making things worse for themselves. Retailers' opposition to price cuts can only be explained by their desire to preserve profits in the event that wholesale costs unexpectedly increase again. According to recent data, nearly 45% of Britons stated they have reduced their number of automobile trips during the past 2 weeks as a result of the rise in fuel prices. According to the Office for National Statistics, more households are reporting rising living expenses, and 91% of Britons have witnessed an increase in their overall cost of living from June 19 to now as a result of higher prices for gasoline, food, and energy. Fuel costs have risen despite a 5p per litre reduction in fuel duty that the Treasury implemented in March. Demands for an additional, bigger cut to aid motorists have been rejected by the administration. Edmund King, head of the Automobile Association, warned that crippling gas prices could stifle summer staycations at a time when airports are having trouble keeping up with demand. He requested that immediate action be taken on price transparency and duty levels by the administration. NATO will significantly raise the number of its soldiers on high readiness, from 40,000 to more than 300,000, in response to the threat posed by Russia, according to Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. In response to the threat posed by Vladimir Putin's Russia, the military alliance will increase its high-alert personnel levels from 40,000 to far over 300,000. Before a NATO conference this week in Madrid, Mr. Stoltenberg told reporters, "We will restructure the NATO response force and raise the number of our high-readiness forces to well over 300,000. Additionally, NATO will modify its terminology about Russia, which was still referred to as a strategic partner in the alliance's 2010 final plan." The Secretary General stated, "That will not be the case in the strategic idea that we will agree upon in Madrid. I anticipate friends will make it abundantly clear that Russia directly threatens our security, our values, and the rules-based international system." The G7 conference, when world leaders reaffirmed their support for Kyiv in the ongoing conflict, was overshadowed by Russia's invasion of Ukraine at the time of the announcement. Prior to Biden's visit, Israel and Arab nations dramatically upped their collaboration. In 2020, Morocco, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain all established diplomatic connections with Israel under the U.S.-mediated Abraham Accords, while Egypt made peace with the Jewish state in 1979. The gathering on Monday comes after a gathering of foreign ministers in the Negev desert in March and is scheduled before Vice President Biden's trip to Saudi Arabia, the Israeli-occupied West Bank, and Israel from July 13 to July 16. Yael Lampert, the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs, stated that we are striving to construct a new regional framework and concrete initiatives that can put flesh on the bones of the Negev Forum. Working groups will look into cooperation in 6 areas, including safety, sustainable energy, and the security of food and water. The group's support for a peaceful resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian problem was also stated in a joint statement. In order to promote the objective of creating a new architecture that truly produces significant outcomes, Limpert said to reporters, "It's a very holistic approach." The next ministerial meetings, which are anticipated to take place later this year, will be an annual gathering of the 6 countries' foreign ministers, according to the statement. The encounter in Manama is a part of a flurry of diplomatic activity in the area prior to Biden's arrival, which Washington has highlighted as a boon for regional ties. As a result of the trip, the U.S. president has come under fire for disparaging Saudi Arabia as a pariah in light of the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi by Saudi agents in 2018. His trip to the top oil exporter in the world comes in the wake of a dramatic increase in crude prices following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has hurt both U.S. voters and global economies. The de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, visited Turkey last week for the first time since Jamal Khashoggi was killed at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. His trip was among the flurry of official visits. Full normalization is the goal of MBS and Erdogan's meeting in Turkey. The Emir of Qatar made his maiden trip to Cairo following the normalization of relations between the two nations following a Saudi-led schism, and the Prime Minister of Iraq was in both Saudi Arabia and Iran. Prior to President Abdel Fattah al-scheduled Sisi's arrival to the country on Tuesday following a trip to Oman, Egyptian flags were flying in Bahrain's capital on Monday. Saudi minister said that Egypt and Saudi Arabia have signed 14 transactions totaling $7.7 billion under the Abraham Accords, negotiated by the former U.S. President Donald Trump. The UAE and Bahrain established connections with Israel, and later Morocco resumed ties with the Jewish state. The Abraham Accords enraged the Palestinians, who claimed they betrayed a long-standing Arab agreement to isolate Israel until it consents to the creation of a Palestinian state, with its capital in East Jerusalem.